Hello, everyone. We're live. I would like to welcome our guest today, Stefan from the Westhuizen on here. Um, he's had a few Twitter debates with me before, and he asked to come onto the show, of which, of course, anyone who is being respectful, I would take for a debate, and I'm looking forward to this debate. As you can see from the title, the debate is about township murders and farm murders. So, without further ado, let's keep it short. Stefan, I would like to give you time to introduce us to your point of view.
How's it, Willem? Thanks for having me. The guys are always, mainstream media is always punting the farm murders, and you see a lot of farm murders making it to the front pages, but you never see the township murders making it to the front pages where the social capital of the people living in the townships and in the suburbs, they don't normally carry that much weight to enable them to have a platform where people can have a discussion around what is going on. And for me, farm murder is very important. I think anyone would be an idiot to say that a murder on a farm is not important. I mean, the farmer he employs people and he provides food for the nation. But the worker does not give the food to the nation, and he's not employing anyone. But from a emotional point of view, the murder is a murder, and it affects everyone negatively. And I feel that the disproportionate reporting on the murders on farms is actually contributing to the racial divide that we are seeing in South Africa, where people are now feeling especially the Afrikaans former communities, they think that there's this genocide that is happening to them. And in reality, a genocide is something that would happen in a place like Palestine, where you've got a crackdown on civilians, airplanes dropping bombs on them. That is genocide. And I would just like to, say that there's a different side to the story. And I think that if South Africa, especially white Afrikaans South Africa, takes notice of what's happening in the townships and maybe stand in solidarity with what is happening in the townships, that the murders and service delivery, for example, and the extreme poverty, that things would go better for the farmers and the people in the suburbs.
Yeah, well, as I said to Mark Supria also once before he blocked me on Twitter, he actually blocked me immediately after this. Well,
Uh,
people always criticize organizations like AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement and others like Steve Hofmeyer and the NGO he just started called Toekomsfonk and all these for focusing on farm murders. But if you so much care about township murders, why don't you start your own organization just like AfriForum, but you focus on township murders? And I would be 100% behind it to support it.
okay, so I understand that there's no real verifiable stats that's coming from the police and stuff on the how can I the severity of what is going on in the townships. And I do understand, each to his own, but doesn't coming from a Christian background where most white Afrikaans speaking South Africans comes from a Christian upbringing. Should we not worry about the Samaritans? Should we not worry about anyone else around us? Should we only worry for ourselves?
Well, I can speak for myself, and I can tell you that I would 100% be behind an organization that tries to eradicate township murders. And I would have no problem with standing in solidarity with such organization. And of course, I do feel that township murders are also, terrible things to happen. It's just that the reason why we focus on farm murders is because it is racial incitement that is preceding it, and the killings are all racial. I know Ernst Roots, I can quote him on this. They studied the statistics for over, I think I might be wrong, but it might be even over 10,000 farm attacks thus far in the last 2 to 3 decades, which they studied, and not a single farm attack was carried out by, a non-black person. There was one instance where there was an Indian guy involved, and that's it. It's always black people. Whereas township murders are domestic crimes. Coming from also a background of farming, I know it's quite rampant, these domestic crimes, and especially amongst the culture of some of the black tribes in South Africa. Hitting your wife is common practice when you drink on the weekend, and when a guy had too much to drink, it's very easy for him to kill his wife by hitting her to death, beating her to death. And I'm not saying it's not bad, it's terrible, but that's the majority of township crimes are these passionate domestic crimes, whereas all farm attacks, I would say, is a racial hatred thing. And the reason why I say all farm murders is a racial hatred thing is because there has literally never been a white on white farm murder or farm attack for that matter. And I just want to go to that point of township murders and farm murders not being equally reported in the media. As we all know, the media is behind sensation, and always when there's two races involved, that's where sensation is. And AfriForum actually did a very good study on this, where they tested how many articles came out on white on black violence versus black on white violence or incidents like that. And most of these white on black violence incidents are not even verified. Most of them turn out to be nothing burgers, and the media just completely blow them up. We see the Kudini two people who I believe are completely innocent, who has been um, convicted of a murder on the witness of a guy who was known for being a drunk and known for making false statements to the police. And he was convicted on that, and now the guy has come out and said that he has lied. So the point of the study that AfriForum done was that it's 4,000% more reported in the media when there's an incident like this, where there's let's say a white guy beating up a black guy on a farm, or someone who mistakes someone for a baboon or a warthog or something, which we can talk about. I know black people always go on Twitter and say that it's an outrage when this happens, but coming from a hunting perspective and knowing how it looks when you hunt at night, I know that such accidents will happen if the guy is in someone's plantation. So the point being is that township murders aren't sensational. They are not between two races. So yes, township murders won't be reported as much as farm murders. But then look at the other side of the story. Look at something like a white guy that beat up a black guy or allegedly beat up a black guy, and is 4,000% more in the media than farm murders are.
Just coming back to, I read, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about a white farmer killing another white farmer. So I know it's a very small minority, right? But I do not agree with you that most farmers or farm attacks are because of racial hatred. I think farmers are mostly targeted because they are out in the middle of nowhere. It is easy for anyone to ambush them. And if someone sees a farmer drive up to his farm, he's got a nice bakkie. The people know there's guns in the house, there's food in the house, there's everything that they don't have in the house. The inequity behind it all is, for me, the driving force. And yes, I do agree that with incitement of the populist politicians like Andile from Blackland First, that people will consider, where they would have sat down and said, okay, listen, I want to attack that guy, but I'm not going to attack that guy. And now he hears all this nonsense about the farmers have killed your grandparents and what. If I can understand that would fuel an attack, and but I think also taking into consideration the reason why this guy would consider attacking a farm is because he's living in this poverty situation, and he's living in conditions which are inhumane. And inhumane conditions would breed in people that act inhumanely towards other people. And for me, that is the big thing. If we address the inequity, and we as white South Africa, and especially, Steve Hofmeyer, I was having the same discussion with him about 2 or 3 years ago on Twitter as well. And me and my father went to Church Square, and I held up a placard that said, township murders and farm murders are equal. And, um, the followers, Steve's followers, and the white Afrikaner, the folk, they were really pissed off at me, in the sense that they really wanted to murder me, kill me. They were sending like the nastiest stuff to my fiance, telling her they wish she would get raped by black men, and all kinds of nasty things, stuff you wouldn't expect from your fellow white South Africans who have also been raised in a Christian house. And the reason why I wanted to speak to Steve and get the point across, and it is the same reason I want to speak to you about it, is, if we tackle the township conditions and the extreme poverty, that maybe we can turn the tide. If people in the township see that white South Africa actually cares about what's happening in the townships, then maybe they would sit back and say, listen, what you guys, you politicians, are talking this and this and this and saying this and that about white people, but they are helping us. So I don't know. What do you think?
The thing is, I'll respond to your immediate question quickly, and then I'm going to respond to some other things you said earlier. But on your immediate question, it seems like you have a calling to work in the townships, just like I have a calling to work against farm murders and so forth. So I think it's just different callings, and as I'm working against farm murders, you can work against township murders. And you can set up your own toekomstfonk like Steve Hofmeyer, or your own AfriForum, and do the exact same thing they do. There's no laws that prohibits it. And if you feel so passionate, and if you feel it is your calling, then why don't you go out and do it as an Afrikaner? It's just that I'm not going to do it because that's not my calling, but clearly it is your calling. And I would
I'm actually
100%.
focusing. Okay, sorry.
I would 100% support you in that. I just want to come back quickly to you saying that you think the reason why they target farmers is because they are, removed from civilization, one can say, and they easy targets. It doesn't make sense to me, because I'm going to talk about three guys that I have supporters. One is a farmer in Idaho, one is a farmer in Wyoming, and the other is a farmer in Russia. And in Wyoming, for example, on the farms, there hasn't been any violence or a killing on a farm for the last 8 years. So none, and there are more farmers in Wyoming than there are in South Africa. If I'm not mistaking, the rural population of Wyoming is around 800,000. So the logic is that uh, you say that they're easy targets, but the logic is that because they are so far removed, they should have the least crime possible. And the exact same thing in Russia. Russia was a crime-ridden country in the 90s. Russia had even higher crime than South Africa in the 90s, but none of that crime was ever on the farms, because farms are far removed. The crime happens in the city, and that's exactly what the emissary said when he came to South Africa. It has to be a targeted killing. It's not a
What
a
is the
robbery.
poverty rate in Wyoming?
Well, in Wyoming, it's not as bad as in South Africa, but as Russia in the 90s, it was far worse than South Africa was. So
Okay. And the conditions in the ghettos or townships or whatever you call it, is it comparable to South Africa? I don't think so.
no, I think Russia was quite worse. I mean, they fell. They had one of the worst economic collapses that the world has ever seen there, and drug abuse is worse in the ghettos in Russia still today. Single motherhood is not okay, not comparable to South Africa, but it's still very bad in Russia. The conditions in Russia was very, very bad. It's a lot better now than it was back then. But if you look at, like, what's that EFC fighter? Khabib, if you look at what he talks about, how he grew up in the ghettos of Dagestan in Russia. I think it is very comparable to South Africa. And the fact is that, it never happened on the farms because the farms are far removed. So if you want to go and do a farm killing, you have to. It has to be a planned thing that you plan, let's say a week or 2 weeks or even years ago. And you say, okay, we are going to target farmer X. We're going to go to his house at 2 a.m. We're going to be there. We're going to drive, 80 kilometers onto his farm on the dirt road to get there. It's a very planned thing, and it's a terror attack. It's not like the same as a domestic crime in a township. It's ridiculous to think it's the same.
So the generational poverty, I think that is in South Africa is being ignored totally when dealing with township murders, because the generational poverty comes from the British, which screwed everyone over. I mean, here, me and you we are speaking English to each other. We are both Afrikaners, but we as the Afrikaners were left in charge after the British came here, and they kicked our butts and they started exporting our products or our minerals. So they left a bunch of Afrikaners in charge, which could manage the white Afrikaner nation, and these guys were in charge of productions. I think of them as managers, and with the owners sitting in London, and
Exactly.
all of the money that was, all the minerals that were excavated were sent over to the UK. The NP Broederbondes were there. They helped. I mean, BEE, affirmative action, all of that. What the ANC is doing today is exactly what the NP government back then, to build up the Afrikaners after the depression, and the Afrikaners had nothing really when the British left us and we gained independence. But the problem is that the British left us and said, these black South Africans, your fellow black South Africans that were in the townships, not in the townships, in the concentration camps with you, use them as the cheap labor, which you would need to get the minerals out of the ground. So that happened. We created these artificial ghettos and townships. More and more people came here, and we left it. And that generational poverty is not taken into consideration. Like when you said now about Russia and all of that, I'm pretty sure that the generational poverty is not the same. Yes, they might have suffered during the 90s when communism collapsed. I remember the videos clearly about seeing tanks being sold off to anyone, really. The army would just take their tanks, their guns, anything, and sell it to get a buck, to make a living. But the township murders are not the only thing that I'm worried about. I'm also worried about the farm murders. And I'm just saying that in order to address the farm murders, we have to look at the township murders. We have to look at the suburb murders, because the dealing with the farm murders as an entity on itself will not work. It is a symptom. The cause is much deeper.
Just one thing that you said, the black people were with us in the concentration camps. I've never heard before that there were black people with the Boere in the
Yeah,
concentration camps.
roughly 80,000.
I've never heard of that. I'm gonna have to check those stats for
Yeah,
myself, but
for
I'll
sure.
take your word for it.
For sure.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I don't see how helping the township murders is going to eradicate farm murders directly, but I can see the indirect link. Just so we can both agree that the ANC government has made a total mess up of everything. you can say they had a very lackadaisical attitude towards fighting any crime in South Africa. Or do you agree with
Corruption,
that?
corruption, capitalism. I know you're an avid supporter of the capitalist system. Sorry for the cat, but the the problem is unchecked crony capitalism. And I mean, I can agree capitalism had its place in the world. Martin Luther King said the same, it had its place in the world, but now it's maybe perhaps time to move on to something more responsible, something a bit more sustainable.
Are you a communist?
No, I'm not. I'm
So,
a socialist.
but the thing about socialism is Karl Marx also called it socialism. So
The one thing I don't agree with Marx is Marx said socialism will inevitably end up in capitalism, and you know I'm a very staunch supporter of community-driven initiatives. I don't like big governments. I don't like controlling governments.
so you're a staunch supporter of AfriForum then?
Well, I'm a supporter of. I did support AfriForum until they gave them money every month and everything. Until I started noticing, you know, that they are pushing a one-sided agenda, if I can put it that way. Not an agenda, but a cause, and they were not really caring about the bigger picture. So
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm also a very big supporter of community-driven
yeah,
projects and civil society.
yeah.
But socialism in itself is not civil society. Socialism is from big government, and wherever we've seen it worldwide, it has been a massive failure. Look at Venezuela is the latest example. Look at Zimbabwe. It doesn't work.
We are digressing a bit, but maybe we should have this discussion another time about socialism, capitalism, and such. But just I think there was never really a proper socialist state. You know, the thing that came closest to a proper socialist state would be Burkina Faso, and where Thomas Sankara was in charge, and you know he got murdered for turning the country around, clamping down on corruption, clamping down on government spend, everything. 4 years after that, his best chummy that helped him to get into power, to overthrow the corrupt government, started taking money from the French again, and they put a bullet in his head. So I don't think there was really a proper communist government in any case, but that's something we can talk about later, of course.
What about Germany in the 1930s? Wasn't that a proper socialist state?
That was a nationalist socialist state. Yeah, that was that. You know, if you take how quickly they recovered after the First World War, and how Volkswagen and all of that bolstered the economy, and how quickly Germany was ready. One would have to say socialist principles works. But
yeah, well, you can say national socialist principles work if you want to make that argument, but not socialist principles, because then Venezuela must have worked, and Burkina Faso that you just talked about isn't the most shining example of a utopia now, is it?
No, it's not. No, but would you say rich socialist is still a socialist?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Would you say a rich socialist is still a socialist?
Well, always the oligarchs who are in power in a socialist state are always rich. So yeah, usually the people in power in a socialist state will be rich, but the people on the ground are the ones who suffer. You can see that the same with the EFF. They are out now with their manifesto launch, drinking Johnny Walker Blue Label, hiring walls in their suits and their Gucci shoes, and the next day they give some guys in the squatter camp a juice box and an orange and tell them to go protest. So that's just how socialism always plays out.
But by definition, a rich socialist can't be a socialist. He's a capitalist.
All right.
So I understand, you know, as a socialist, I've actually been to EFF protests. The last time a bunch of far-right people were posting my pictures online. It was when I was at the EFF protest, and the EFF protest was about removing Zuma as head of the country. And it is something as a socialist that I can agree upon, and I protested in solidarity. They said I was an EFF member. I've never been an EFF member. And obviously also all the hate mail and all of that came, but that doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is the fact that Gucci socialists are poisoning the minds of everyone. I mean, you've got a 100% correct view of what socialism entails in the world as it is now. The leaders are always rich. A socialist leader can never be rich. A socialist leader must be like Sankara. Do yourself a favor, go check. If you want some links, I'll give it to you. You can see how this man lived, and he lived a humble life. So yeah, but I think we have digressed a lot now. I think we can head back to the farm murders and township murders. And
yeah, the reason why I talk about socialism so much is because it seems like you say that's the solution to, eradicate farm murders and
no,
and so forth. The thing is, I'll end off the socialism debate. I just want to say one more thing, and that is that Karl Marx himself said that, and he said that very late in his life, that socialism can never work because of one factor, and that is human greed. And that just plays out everywhere where we have socialism. It's always just the oligarchs and the guys in charge who become exceptionally rich, and the rest must suffer.
You're a theology student, right? And
yes, I am.
I'm not sure what would happen if I set my foot in a church, if I would catch fire or not. I'm not sure, but I do believe in a higher power. I call it God. I believe in Christ. And for me, the original sin, the Adam and Eve creation story, the people Adam and Eve had everything they could ever want and which they would ever need. But they went and took from the one thing they could never, or God said to them they must never take, and that is that greed in the hearts of human man, that I want that little thing extra, that little bit extra. And I think I wonder sometimes, if and I'm not sure when, I think it's Matthew 6:24, I'm not sure, where Jesus speaks about God and mammon, and you can have one master, you can't have both, and God represents love for me. It represents solidarity. Mammon represents self-love and greed. And for me, it is everything that I do. The fact that I gave up my job to help a bunch of Bacharezi here in Centurion that's being evicted. Everything I do out of love, and I do not act and deal in hate. And that is why, I'm really thinking that if white people in general in South Africa start caring about what is happening in townships, and I mean, caring would be something as simple. You don't need to go out and protest. I mean, doing that would actually give people like Andile a platform where he can say, look at these white guys. They're coming into here to cause troubles for you in the township. Let's go and pick a fight with him. I know I'm not saying go out and protest, but I think it was a week or two ago, Delil said something about a tax revolt. And, I'm saying, let's support this tax revolt. We don't need to vote DA. We don't need to support them or anything, but take that money, pay it into a account that is totally transparent, and use that money in the townships and start destroying the generational poverty that's in there and create healthy environments for people to grow up and have a healthy mindset. Because now these people, how many generations since the British left us, and they have grown up in townships, and they were sold a dream in '94, and that dream has never realized. It's like a 23, 24 year nightmare, ongoing nightmare. I go into
I
yeah,
want to cut in there, maybe,
yeah.
Stefan. There's been a very interesting question here from the guys watching. Some guy asked you, why is white squatter camps not violent like black squatter camps are?
The generational poverty and the levels of education that we were subjected to.
So, do you think the white people in squatter camps, they are, they still have all that education, and they doesn't matter when they lost all of their money, whether they lost it 10 years ago or whether they never had any money. How does that make a difference?
How long does it, or do you think, does it take to dehumanize someone? To take away his worth as a human being and to make him feel less than human?
Well, the ANC has been very successful in the last 25 years to do that to the whites. And if
A
I look at
generation.
the if I look at the yeah, maybe a generation. If I look at the comments on Twitter and so forth, especially from young black people, I would say the ANC has been successful. I don't think these people do see us as humans. I think they just see us as, racists, and that's where their logic ends.
I've been into many townships because of the work that I did, and I've been into city centrals and villages and such. The city centrals, they are the most sketchy by far, but going into the townships and going into the villages, I just want to tell you a story. I don't know if you how well you know the northwest in towards Alice Ras.
I know Alice Ras, that's in Limpopo, not northwest.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Limpopo. Yeah, sorry. So on the way there, there's a town called, or well, a village called Sodoma, and I was trying to take a shortcut to get to one of the places I needed to be, and I ended up on a gravel road, and this gravel road was a bit too much for the Ford Bantam bakkie I was in, and the water pipe, one of the nipples on the engine mounting came loose, and it broke off. And the only thing that was close to me was this village of Sodoma, and I walked there, and it was in the middle of that big drought we were experiencing, and I walked back to the village. It was about 1 kilometer in this thick sand. It's like ocean sand almost. And I come to this old black toppy, and he says, I ask him, yes, and Tati, please, can you help me here? My car is broken down, this and this and this. He got the whole village up there to help me get the bakkie, turned around, get someone with the other bakkie from the neighboring village to come and help me pull, give me a tow into the closest mechanic that could help me. And what I have experienced as a white South African and going around South Africa, I've always treated people with respect. I've never looked down on them. That part in the Bible where it says, treat others like you would like them to treat you, do unto others, and that is our ideal. And as I said to you earlier, our ideal in love. And maybe that is why people don't act racist towards me, because I've seen black racist people. I've seen it. It is a reality. But many people say that black people can't be racist in South Africa because they don't own the means of production, they don't own the money, they don't control the system. And the reality is that if you are a majority and there's a small minority, then you obviously have the power if you're part of the majority.
Listen, Stefan, can I ask you something? It's also from the guys watching. Do you feel guilty for being white?
No, not at all. There's no guilt. Guilt won't serve any purpose. I couldn't vote. Well, I wasn't old enough to vote. But no, I don't feel guilty for being white.
Well, that's the exact same thing with me. I was also never old enough to vote during apartheid. I wasn't even born during apartheid. So the only thing I ever see is these people telling me that, everything that's going on what they are so poor and it's all my fault and it's all my parents' fault. And my dad
No,
voted
but
in one election
yeah,
during
but
apartheid.
don't take it
So
personal. Don't take it personal.
mm,
Remember, you are not at fault here. I'm not at fault. The average guy in the suburb is not at fault. We've been duly paying our taxes. That money was supposed to go into the township development. And it never got there because there was someone sitting in the middle, both in private and public sectors, taking the money. Bosasa is a great example of the shit that went wrong. So it is unfair for me or to me that the guys that were born after apartheid came to an end is now getting shit about apartheid. I mean, how can you help for apartheid? There's no ways that you can go back, say, listen, don't do this. But I think a big part of this comes from the fact that people don't know the proper history of South Africa. Were you aware of I think it was the Torchlight Brigade in South Africa?
no, I've never heard about that.
The Torchlight Brigade was a bunch of white people, and they organized the protest. Now, I think back then how difficult it was to organize a protest. And they organized a protest against the exclusion of the colored community from voting. And they organized a protest, 75,000 white people. Huh? And there was always white people that fought against the system. But many people don't know about this. And it is something, I mean, a whole bunch of Afrikaners don't know. And yeah, I blame ignorance for the conditions in our country, really. That's it. Also,
Okay, but let's talk about solutions. How do you propose we're going to fix this? Because I think it will be nice if you give your idea of a solution and then I can give my idea of a solution.
of course. Well, as I said, I would support sort of a tax revolt where we bypass the government totally and use the money collective. Like, I mean, a whole bunch of members of the folk or business owners and such, and they can just like say, listen, government, we are going to bite the bullet and we are going to support this revolt because we want to see the money where it's supposed to go. I mean, can they really lock up all the CEOs of companies? I'm pretty sure they can, but will the rest of allow people to lock up people that are trying to do good by our fellow man? I don't think so. So that is one of the things, and if we challenge the perception that all white South Africa was the arseholes, because it's not all of white South Africa. It was the rich white arseholes, the capitalist elite of the old NP government in cahoots with the capitalist elite from London, which caused our issues. I mean, if you look, Cecil John Rhodes, Lord Milner, they were the guys that started with the segregation laws, and the rich, the ultra rich, created the problem, and us as the average Joe. The farmer is also average Joe, even if he's got a bank account of 10 million rand. He's also just the average Joe. And there's things that we need to speak about, and we must acknowledge that the rich white people don't really care about anything. They will feel racial tension just to stay rich. And for me, it is just, if we show solidarity with our brothers and sisters that are in the townships. I mean, everyone is brothers and sisters in Christ. And if we show solidarity and we help them, then they are going to stand up and tell the political elite, listen here, you are now just causing trouble. Get away from us. These people are trying to help us. Go sit there and go play with yourselves.
The thing is, I think what you're talking about now seems, very wonderful and utopian and everything, but I don't think it's ever possible to achieve in real life. And the reason why I'm saying that is because that's exactly what the exact story that we've been sold for the last 29 years since the end of apartheid is. We're going to do exactly what you're doing now, and we're going to live happily and peacefully together We're going to build up the townships. And I'm going to be honest with you, for the first decade, it worked. When Mandela came into power, I remember watching some videos from some rugby games, for example, and it was very multicultural, and people from different races sat together, and there was people waving the new flag, and there was people waving the old flag, and the old flag was a representation for Afrikaner people, for their culture, and nobody had a problem with it. And as these years progressed, you see everything that is Afrikaans and everything that is Afrikaner become so much more hated, and the people become so much more hateful towards it. There you have Mandela speaking at the 1995 World Cup, and there were roughly 50% of the flags that were being used in the stadiums were old flags, and 50% were new flags, and it was a cultural thing. I remember when I was still a kid, you could buy an old flag. When you go to a rugby game, it was never a problem for anyone. And then the Afrikaner, the flag that was representing the Afrikaner culture, became demonized, and now in the last 5 or so years, it became a symbol of whatever. People just hate it. The same thing with universities. We were being told, okay, we're going to have our English universities. We're going to uplift people with Afrikaners. We'll keep their Afrikaans universities. And one after the other, every single one of the Afrikaans universities has fell double medium school and then to single medium.
Hello. Willem. Hello. Hello. Willem.
Seems like my internet has cut out. I've just come back on there. But
Welkom terug.
otherwise, thank you. Yeah. As I was saying, so we tried all of that. We tried living together. We tried building each other up, and we failed in that. And I think now's the time that we can say, okay, let's balkanize, let's separate, let's each get our own territory and do our own thing, because clearly this multicultural experiment is not working. That is worse for everybody.
I'm not much of a nationalist, as I believe that obviously I don't believe in private ownership, but we have to worry about what's happening in the townships, but we also have to worry about what is happening in our neighboring countries. Lesotho, for example, just to give you the Bagharese that I'm working with, nearly 70% of them are from Basotho people. So, it is a necessity that we think about what's going on in other countries, because poverty will just keep on creating the conflict. It will keep on creating the spoiled or the social experiment that has gone wrong. And there will always be a division because of poverty. That is the long and the short of it, huh?
Yeah, well, I think we have tried it, and I would say that what I would fight for is a separate state, a sovereign state, not just a folk state, as people are saying, which still falls on this other, a completely sovereign state. And I think that's our only going forward, and doing very well now. They are.
Willem?
involvement by other movements to criminal courts and give us our constitutional rights to
Willem?
from the rest of the country. Because yeah, sorry.
Sorry, you're breaking up badly.
Yeah, it's my signal is terrible. I say a lot of people are. Come on.
We can continue this when you're on an ADSL line or a. I mean, the conversation is going on long now, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot more we can talk about.
Yeah, it's just I'm on mobile internet because with the rain our fiber line
Oh,
broke, so it's terrible. But yeah, that's basically actually we can end off the discussion there. I just wanted to basically say that Article 25 gives us the right to self-determination,
yeah,
separate from the rest of the country.
yeah.
And that's in our constitution, and also the international laws of the United Nations and the International Criminal Court also gives a people the right to self-determination. And I think we can. I would say I am done here, and I think a lot of Afrikaners feel the same way. I'm done with the ANC. I'm done with Julius Malema. I'm done with Andile Mzitama. I'm done with Cyril Ramaphosa's lackadaisical attitude towards providing safety for the citizens of this country. I'm done with people stealing all the money that I pay in taxes.
Mhm.
Um, the only solution for me is, to invoke Article 25 of the Constitution and get our own state where we don't have all these problems, because we've been trying for the last 29 years since the end of apartheid in 1990, and things were going well in the beginning. And as the years progressed, things just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And now we are at a level where politicians are literally not even dog whistling, but effectively calling for the slaughter of other people. And we can't go on like this.
No, for sure. But just a question: where would this uh, whole separate nation be? Would it be in the Western Cape? Would it be in the Eastern Cape? Would it be here in Gauteng? Where do you realistically think that you can put up a nation and like stay on your own without the interference of the your neighbor, which would be South Africa, which would be in a shitty position? How that would not affect you? I've just told you now before you said this that we have to look at what is happening in our neighbors' countries like Lesotho, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, because the issues of the problem over there, or the issues over there, eventually ends up in South Africa. And what would be different if you now go and secede and go and make a new nation?
Immigration won't be allowed. Immigration from these countries won't be allowed at all. It will be very, very, very strict immigration control. And the thing is, it doesn't really matter where it is or how big it is, because as long as we just have our own country, our own safe haven, our own tax haven, because if we have a country like that, I think most of people would agree with me. It will be a completely libertarian state with no taxes being on anything, like America was in the beginning before they started with taxation in the last 100 years. Because for the first 200 years of America, there was no taxation. The same concept. And if you want to still live in South Africa, you can live there, but you register your business within the our own sovereign nation, and you pay your taxes there, and we make sure that we create laws that will you know what's the English word, that will um, prevent the ANC or whomever would be in charge in the rest of South Africa from stealing your money through taxation. And there's a very easy way to also get your money out of the country today, and that's Bitcoin. And no government can ever uh, prevent you from getting your money out of the country via Bitcoin, and there's no taxation that way. So that will be the plan for such a state would be basically a tax haven and a safe haven for our people, as is our constitutional right to do so. and just break away from the rest of South Africa and, let them do as they have been doing for the last 25 years and tell them, okay, but we're done with you guys. So you can go on as you did. But we don't want that. And that's where I'm saying communism and the communistic nature of the ANC and the South African Communist Party is the cause for all the troubles we are seeing here in South Africa. So I can't, for the life of me, see how your solution of creating a socialist state will make anything better, because we're
No,
already living in one.
no, but I wasn't suggesting we create a socialist state. What part of standing in solidarity suggests that I want to create a socialist state?
Well, you've been on for the whole conversation now about how you think socialism can solve all these things and how real
No,
socialism has never been tried.
no, sorry. You are assuming that I said we must create a socialist state. I said we must stand in solidarity with the people in the townships. And just back to the nation state. As I said to you, I don't believe in private ownership of any land. It is the earth is my mother. It is everyone's mother. Everyone was born from this earth. Everyone will go back to this earth. And man-made borders are silly things. There's no ways that a small nation state like what you are proposing will ever see safety in an environment where there is poverty all around it. There will never be safety. It will be the same as Israel and Palestine now. It will
Well,
be
Israel is looking after their citizens quite well. I mean, most Israeli citizens are quite safe.
I'm not sure. You remember before the video started, you asked me what my age. I said to you, I'm 40. You said I'm Gen X. I said, yeah, I remember a couple of things you might not remember. And one of the things that I do remember was bomb drills at schools. And my mom was a teacher, and she was a single parent. My father was here in Joburg, so she was in Bloemfontein, and we would come up here. And I remember reading about newspapers, always being aware what's happening in the country, what unlists or riots we are experiencing, and where bomb attacks took place. And that was when the armed struggle was really, a thing. And I remember the one day we had to come to Pretoria. She had to go to the education department to get some forms or something. And I was so paranoid as a kid. I think I was maybe 10, 11 years old, that I was walking around in the street, checking underneath all the cars, not only our car. I was checking in the bins, the dust bins for bombs. I was checking packages, everything. I'm not sure if you want to go and live in a world like that, but I don't. That is what will happen. We will go back to that type of environment again.
No, we won't, because we won't allow the ANC terrorists into our territory.
There's no wall big enough that can stop. Do you remember the movie? I think it was Brad Pitt that played in some zombie movie, and the holy city of Jerusalem was like a stronghold for mankind, and everyone was now in there. And when the zombies heard the singing in the city, and this wall was massive, and there was joy and jubilation, then all of a sudden these walls were nothing. And the walls will never keep out poor people, desperate people, hungry people. If I'm hungry and my family hasn't eaten, I will go steal. I hope you're not my neighbor then, because I will steal from you. But
Well, don't you think it's a bit racist to, create this simile between brainless zombies who are just after killing all the people and the black people of South Africa?
no, there was nothing racist about it. It was all about people in poverty. coming into a place where there is wealth. There is no wall that will keep out poor people. No wall.
No, well, there's other means of keeping people out, but still,
Uh,
I
uh,
mean, most
there,
of
no,
most of these people are going to Europe in any case now, it seems. But any case, Stefan, I think we're reaching a point where we're just talking in circles. Do you think you can make some closing statements on what you had to say?
no. Well, the only thing that I'm asking white South Africa is to really think about their brothers and sisters in the townships who are suffering because of our grandparents and their greed. That's it.
All right. No, thank you very much for coming on. I think our biggest disagreement is on what the solution is. I still think, or I will always think that a solution is to get a separate state, like Article 25 of the Constitution is our constitutional right to do so. And if you look at Hungary and Poland, and I think Slovakia to some extent, Austria to some extent, it seems like walls are working for keeping out the migrants out of those countries. There are migrants flooding into Germany and Sweden and France and these countries. There are more than 2 million already in Germany, but Hungary and Poland, and especially Hungary, has been very, very, very successful at keeping them out. I don't think there's a so-called refugees in Hungary. So if you want to keep them out, you can keep them out very easily, and I don't think there's any way, or there's any way for them to come in if you are willing to do whatever it takes to keep them out.
Yeah, you see, do whatever it takes means killing people, like they're doing in Israel. That's what it means. So I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to kill people that are hungry, people that are wanting to feed their families. So we do disagree about the solutions here, and I don't think we ever gonna agree on it. But I would suggest that you always remember generational poverty and what is coming in 25 years, which is the fourth industrial revolution, where 80% of the jobs we have now won't exist. You're going to have more poor people. So
I know that. So it's people are going to need to evolve their skills into whatever is needed in the future.
there won't be humans. That's robots will do everything. Artificial intelligence will do everything. It is already happening now. You're a farm boy. You know that tractors now can drive themselves, or harvesters can drive themselves around.
Yeah, you still need someone to, to
Mm,
be on duty to make sure that nothing goes wrong. But
Of
I get
course,
what you're saying.
of course. So, take the future into consideration, take the past into consideration. Hopefully we can arrive at a place. There is no black hate towards white people. Um, Some people, yes, but the same can be said about white people hating on black people. I saw this article, or not an article, a post about the school kids that died in that bridge that collapsed, and this Lindsay Marsdorp said, so be it. It happened. Three less settlers to deal with in the future. And then there was a hate retaliation knee jerk from white far right South Africa, and I don't even want to call them. I don't even know, what is far right anymore. You asked the same question: what is far right anymore? But it is hateful and inhumane type of comments, and so you will get jackasses on both ends. But have faith in your fellow South Africans. Have a heart for them. Try and understand the position where they are in and where they've been stuck in. The generational poverty has not been broken. And the white South Africa would never know peace unless that poverty is broken somehow.
All right. Thank you very much, Stefan. I'm going to end this conversation
Yeah,
up here. Thanks for coming up, and thanks for your input into the situation. And
yeah.
everyone who watched, thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in again next time. Goodbye.